Resourceful Designer, episode 272, Navigating the Peaks and Valleys of Freelancing.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He's developing an appreciation for jazz. Mark Decote.
My late brother was a jazz flutist, and he released a couple of albums. And although I never really appreciated his music while he was alive, after he passed away, I started listening to it more and more. And I grew to like it. And there was also a television show that my wife and I watched called Bosch. It's a detective-type TV show. And in it, they talk a lot about jazz and mention a lot of jazz musicians and songs and that. And after watching the show, I started looking these people up and listening to them. And you know what? I found that I liked what I was hearing. Now, I'm not somebody who listens to a lot of music. I usually listen to podcasts or audiobooks, especially while working. I don't really care for music or anything while I'm working. But I did find that listening to instrumental jazz whenever I'm doing mundane work can actually make the time go by more enjoyably. Then again, I could say the same thing about classical music. Oh well. In this week's podcast episode, I'm going to discuss something that every freelance designer experiences, peaks and valleys when it comes to workload and income. But before I get to that, first of all, I want to thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate when you tune in and listen, whether you're brand new, welcome to the show, or you're a longtime listener. I really appreciate you tuning in every week to hear what I have to say about running a design business. Now, I just want to acknowledge that this past week on September 30th was the 6th anniversary of launching this podcast. Resourceful Designer has been around since 2015. I launched on September 30th, which is International Podcast Day. I thought, what a great way to launch podcasts on that day. Plus, I'll always remember when I launched. And it's been 6 years. And I just want to thank you for being a small part of this journey that I've been on. I appreciate every minute you spend with me. So thank you. And now, navigating the peaks and valleys of freelancing. As I've said before on this podcast, and I'll say it again, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing better than working for yourself. From deciding who you want to work with to how much you want to be paid for your work. Being your own boss is, well, it's liberating. You get to set your own hours. You want to goof off during the day and work at night? That's your prerogative. Feel like getting away for a few days? Go ahead. You don't need permission to take time off. You get to choose where and how you want to work. If you feel like spending the day at a coffee shop working away on your laptop, you can. And if you feel like hunkering down at home to avoid all distractions, go for it. As a self-employed designer, a freelancer, if you will, you have the freedom to make your own destiny. And I don't think there are any better careers out there than that. However, I will give kudos to one aspect of working as a design employee for someone else, and that's a steady paycheck. With all the restrictions, the limitations, the hand-holding that may come along with being an employee, the one bright side is knowing that every week or maybe every 2 weeks on a regular schedule, a predetermined amount of money will be deposited into your bank account. And that money shows up regardless of how busy you were during that work period, whether you had a lot of design projects or barely any. You get the same money every time. Now, this may be, in my opinion, the only way that being an employed designer trumps being a freelance designer. It's true. As a self-employed designer, a freelancer, you never know when or where your next pay will come from, nor how much it'll be. And that can cause a lot of stress in people's lives, especially if you are the main breadwinner in the household. Because even though your income may be unpredictable, your monthly expenses are not. They show up right on schedule every month, regardless of the balance in your bank account. Now, I wish I could tell you that there was a simple solution to this dilemma, but there isn't. Ask any self-employed designer, and they'll tell you of their experiences navigating these peaks and valleys. Peaks when work and, of course, income is in abundance, and valleys when they become very scarce. Now, there is no solution if you want to remain a freelancer. However, there are ways to mitigate the problem so that those peaks and those valleys seem to even out over time. So here's what works for me, as well as some other methods that I've heard other designers use that works for them. The first thing I want to talk about is recurring revenue. Now, recurring revenue is exactly as it sounds. It's revenue or income that recurs on a regular basis, kind of like getting a regular paycheck. Now, the best way to accomplish this is by offering some sort of retainer to your clients. I talked about retainer agreements way back in episode 32 of the podcast, and then again in episode 255. The gist of it is offering an ongoing service to your clients that they pay for on a regular basis, as opposed to a one-time for one project. In some cases, you may have to sacrifice some income for the guarantee of this recurring revenue. For example, if you charge by the hour and your regular hourly rate is $100, you may want to offer a retainer where if, say, the client guarantees to pre-purchase, say 10 hours of your time per month, you'll only charge them $90 per hour for those 10 hours. So it's a little bit of incentive for the client to pay up front for that time. Or say a client wants you to design social media posts for them on a regular basis. Well, you could come up to some sort of an agreement with them where they guarantee to pay you a fixed fee every month. In return, you provide them with a certain number of graphics for their social media. And this creates a guaranteed steady income. And since retainer agreements are this guaranteed recurring revenue, they kind of act like a regular paycheck, similar to what you'd get if you were a design employee somewhere. Now, some designers work exclusively on retainer agreements. This is the only way they work. And this allows them to predict with ease how much money they will earn each month because they know in advance. Now, of course, there's a lot more to retainer agreements than just this. So if you want to know more, I suggest you go back and listen to episode 32 and episode 255 and learn what else I had to say about retainer agreements. But suffice it to say that retainer agreements are a great way to even out those peaks and those valleys. Now, another form of recurring revenue is offering a maintenance agreement if you're a web designer. A maintenance agreement states that you will secure and update and take care of a client's website for a certain monthly fee. It's kind of like an insurance policy for their website. And a good percentage of my own income is through maintenance agreements. Now, what's great about them is they require very little time and effort on your part, and they offer peace of mind to your clients. To learn more about maintenance agreements, listen to episode 216 of the podcast, where I talked exclusively about maintenance agreements. Now, another form of recurring revenue, although not as steady or predictable as retainer agreements or maintenance agreements, is selling digital goods. You are a designer, after all, a creative visionary. So why not use the design skills you offer your clients and put them to use for yourself? There are many platforms out there, places such as Creative Market or Design Cuts, where people such as yourself sell their creative wares. Now, these offerings are available to purchase by other creatives, such as ourselves, as well as from people who need certain assets but may not have the skills to create them themselves. Now, that's just one aspect of selling digital products. I myself have created dozens of designs that I sell on various print-on-demand platforms. I then get paid anytime somebody buys, say, a t-shirt or a coffee mug or phone case or even a sticker with one of my designs on them. This is another form of digital goods. Now, in my case, it's not enough to make a living off of, at least not with my few dozen designs, but every month I receive anywhere between, I'd say, $70 and $120 for my design sales. Now, some of those designs I created years ago, and I'm still collecting money from them. And I'm sure that if I dedicated the time to create more of these designs on a regular basis, I could generate a larger recurring income. Now, if you want to know more about selling digital products, go back and listen to episode 155 of the podcast, where I had a conversation about this exact topic with Tom Ross, who is the founder of Design Cuts. So all in all, recurring revenue is a great way to even out the peaks and valleys you'll encounter as a freelancer. But there are other things that you can do to help ease this situation. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard is promote your business when you're busy. It's a case of don't wait till you're thirsty to start digging a well. Now, I know it sounds crazy. When you're pulling your hair out because you have so many projects on the go and deadlines that are quickly approaching, the last thing on your mind is to try to drum up even more work. But believe it or not, that's exactly the time you should be promoting your business. Why? Because marketing takes time to germinate. The more you promote while you're busy, while you're experiencing one of those peaks in the workload I'm talking about, the less deep the valleys will be that you'll have to navigate once that rush of work dies down. If you do it right, you may be able to raise up those lulls, those valleys, to the point where instead of peaks and valleys, you'll be cruising an almost even plane. Now, I know what you're thinking. If I'm that busy, how am I going to find the time to promote my design business? Well, to that, let me say, you don't have to create a huge advertising campaign. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you need to promote your business. All it takes is maybe firing off a couple of emails to idle clients and asking them how they're doing and if there's anything that you can help them with. It doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of effort in order to ensure that you have more work coming in when your current high workload diminishes. And if you do this right, your peaks and your valleys won't be as severe. Now, there's another way for you to lessen the impact of these work lulls. Remember when I said that one benefit of being a design employee is that they get a regular paycheck? Well, you want to know a little secret? You can make yourself a design employee of your own freelance design business and have the best of both worlds. What? No way. Yes way. In fact, I know many designers who do just this. They treat themselves as an employee and draw a regular paycheck from their own business. This is how it works. All the revenue that you earn from design work, as well as any revenue from recurring revenue jobs, as well as selling digital goods or anything else that you make money from, all of that money belongs to your design business. It all goes into a business bank account and is treated the same way as any other business would treat its capital. And from that pool of money, you, the designer, draw a salary. What this does is it forces the business to deal with all the peaks and the valleys of the income revenue. But as far as you're concerned, those peaks and valleys are evened out because you draw the same salary every week. Now, this method spreads out the income evenly over time. Let me give you an example. Let's just use some nice round numbers so the math works out here. Let's say that you decide your salary every week is going to be, $500. Could be $500, could be $5,000, who knows? But let's say $500 a week is what you want to pull out as your quote unquote paycheck. Well, on one week, you take on a web project that's $1,200. And you crank off that website in a week, you get paid, and that $1,200 is deposited into your business bank account. Now, from it, at the end of the week, you withdraw your weekly $500 salary. Well, that leaves $700 in the bank. Well, the following week, things aren't as great. It slows down a little bit, and the only work you had to do was a $300 poster design. You get paid, that $300 gets deposited into the bank account, bringing the balance up to $1,000. Then at the end of the week, you withdraw your $500 salary, which now leaves a balance of $500 in the business bank account, which is enough for your next week's salary should no work come in at all. So the business would experience a valley, but you wouldn't. Now here's the fun part. At any point, as the funds in the business bank account increase, you can always pay yourself a bonus. If you decide instead of $500, I want to take out $2,000 this week, if the money is in the account, you can. There's nobody stopping you. Now, the other benefit is since the business has this money, it's available for business purchases, such as new equipment or subscriptions, which means that money doesn't have to come out of your pocket. It's coming out of the business's expenses, which means it inadvertently hurts less to spend it. I think you get the idea. Now, honestly, this is not the way that I operate, but I know many designers who do. And in most cases, those designers have their design business set up as an LLC, its own entity, or maybe it's some other form of corporation, where I work as a sole proprietorship, so there's no two separate entities. Now, I even know some designers who not only do this method, but they actually use a employee payment service to handle all of this stuff so that they're not tempted to dip into the business account on their own. They allow an outside party or a third party to handle it, and they get their paychecks through them. Now, the best thing you can do is check with your accountant to see if this is a good model for you. It may offer some tax benefits for you as well, especially if your business is incorporated. So I would suggest you look into this. It's a great way to minimize those peaks and valleys of the money you are actually earning and let the business worry about those peaks and valleys. I know it's a little complicated when you are the business, but hopefully it makes a little bit of sense to you. And it's a great way to overcome these highs and lows. Now, the last idea I want to share with you, and this has to do with the rates you charge. Many designers who make the switch for the first time from full-time employment to freelancing end up using their full-time salary as a basis for their freelance rates. Don't. As a freelancer, you are expected to charge more. If you are making, say, $25 an hour working for somebody else, you should be charging your clients double or triple, if not more, for your services. And that's okay. As a self-employed designer, you have to pay for your own benefits. There are no sick day pays or vacation pays or parental leaves when you're self-employed. You have to make sure that you are compensated for that risk of loss of pay due to anything from medical emergencies to vacations in the tropics. You have to cover that risk of loss of pay. And to do that, you need to charge more than what you were making as an employed designer. Call the higher rates you charge a form of self-insurance. You need to make sure that the money you earn when things are going well will get you through the times when work dries up. And you can do this by charging enough to make sure your future is covered. So the more money you charge as a designer, the less impact these peaks and valleys will have on your life. Now, if you're not sure how to go about raising your rates, lucky for you, I actually wrote a blog post about this a while back. You can read it at resourcefuldesigner.com/raiseyourrates, all one word. Well, those are some ideas for dealing with the peaks and valleys of a freelance income. It may sound daunting and stressful, and knowing about these peaks and valleys may have you thinking that, working for someone else, it sounds a lot more appealing now. But if you can learn how to manage the fluctuating income of running your own design business, chances are you'll not only out-earn your employed counterparts, but you'll enjoy much greater job security, autonomy, and flexibility. In fact, a 2018 study done by Upwork, a platform that specializes in freelance work, they showed that nearly 3/4 of full-time freelancers reported earning more than when they had full-time jobs. And 87% of them are optimistic about their future career. In fact, more than half of those who responded said that there's no amount of money that would get them to switch back to being a full-time employee working for someone else. And I know the feeling. That's exactly how I feel. I would never go back to working from somebody else, regardless of any peaks or valleys I may face. Remember, running your own design business is actually two jobs, that of a designer and that of a business owner. When you're pursuing your passion as a designer, it's easy to get caught up in that former position and forget about the latter position of being a business owner. But if all your focus is on the design work, you're only doing half your job. And it's that business owner side that needs to do whatever you can to ensure those inevitable valleys that you are going to face are not as deep as they could be. You do that by actively seeking new work, by charging high enough, and by supplementing your income with perhaps recurring revenue. And you do all of this even while you're busy. Now, one last thing. I've been talking about these valleys as if they're a bad thing, something to eliminate if at all possible. But you know what? When they do happen, and they will, try to enjoy the slower times. Use them to your advantage. When your workload goes down, get out there and network. Use that time to contact old clients you haven't heard from in a while. Or maybe do some personal projects that you've been neglecting. And make sure that you use those slow times to work on your business. You know, all those things that you told yourself you'd get to one day, well, when things get slow is the perfect day to get to them. Heck, you can even use some of that slow time to just relax and enjoy life. After all, anytime you find yourself in a valley, by definition, it just means that there's another peak on the horizon. And that's all I had to say about this. Now, I would love to know what your thoughts are. How do you navigate the peaks and valleys of running your own design business? Please send me an email, feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com. I would love to hear from you. If you want an even better way to communicate with me, you can think of joining the Resourceful Designer community. We have conversations in there each and every day. There's always members talking, communicating, asking questions, giving advice. Every day there's something going on in the community. And it benefits everyone. Even if you're not asking or posing questions, just reading what's going on there will make you a better business owner. Now, I will be closing the community's enrollment at the end of October. I'm going to shut it down for a few months while I do some maintenance within the community. So if you've been thinking of joining, you should do so before October 31st. Because if you miss out, you won't be able to join again till probably sometime in February when I reopen the enrollment. But I can tell you from those within the community, everyone there has benefited from their membership. And we've all become a very close-knit group of, friends. That's what we are. So if you're looking for some design peers to give you guidance, to give you advice, to hold you accountable, to just be your listening board, to help you critique your own work, you name it, why don't you come on over, give the community a try. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community and join today. So I want to thank you for tuning in once again. Wow, I can't believe it's been 6 years that I've been doing this podcast, and I still love it every time. But that's it for me this week. I look forward to coming up with a new topic to discuss next week. But until then, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your design business. Whether you're going through your peaks or your valleys right now, you'll get through it. And to help you out, all you have to do is remember one thing: stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.